Truth is not gentle. It does not arrive with comfort or reassurance. Truth burns. It strips away the protective layers we spend our lives carefully constructing, leaving nothing but exposed nerves and unbearable clarity. When Carlo Michelstaedter wrote that truth is a fire that consumes its bearer, he was not speaking metaphorically. He was describing a lived reality, one that would ultimately destroy him. Michelstaedter believed that most human suffering does not come from pain itself, but from our desperate attempts to escape it. From the moment we become conscious, we begin building walls around ourselves. Beliefs, ambitions, hopes, moral systems, social identities. These structures give the illusion of stability. They make existence seem purposeful, even meaningful. But for Michelstaedter, these walls were not foundations. They were hiding places, and behind them lay a truth most people were too afraid to face. That life, stripped of illusion, offers no guarantees, no inherent meaning, and no final satisfaction. Born in 1887 in Gorizia, a border city shaped by cultural tension and political instability, Michelstaedter entered a world already trembling beneath the weight of modernity. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was beginning to fracture. Science was dismantling religious certainty. Industry was reshaping daily life. Yet beneath all this historical turbulence, Michelstaedter sensed something deeper and more personal, a crisis not of politics or technology, but of existence itself. Unlike many philosophers who speculate from a safe intellectual distance, Michelstaedter lived inside his questions. Philosophy was not an academic exercise for him. It was a matter of survival. While others studied ideas to build careers, he studied them to understand why life felt fundamentally wrong, why satisfaction never lasted, why desire renewed itself the moment it was fulfilled, why happiness always seemed to exist somewhere else, just out of reach. He saw modern life as a treadmill disguised as a journey. People run endlessly toward goals they believe will finally complete them: success, love, recognition, security. But each achievement only deepens the hunger. The moment something is attained, its promise evaporates, replaced by a new desire. This endless pursuit, Michelstaedter argued, is not living, it is postponing life indefinitely. What terrified him was not suffering, but distraction. He believed society was structured to keep people busy enough to avoid asking the most dangerous questions. Work, entertainment, ambition, morality, progress all functioned as anesthesia. They dulled awareness. They kept individuals moving forward without ever stopping to ask why they were moving at all. In his studies at the University of Florence, Michelstaedter immersed himself in Greek philosophy, especially Parmenides and Plato, but also modern thinkers who grappled with nihilism and pessimism. Yet he found none of them honest enough. Too many philosophers, in his view, identified the emptiness of existence only to immediately cover it with new systems, new meanings, new justifications for continuing as before. Michelstaedter refused such compromises. He began to articulate a devastating distinction between what he called rhetoric and persuasion. Rhetoric was the way most people lived, by convincing themselves that tomorrow would justify today, that future happiness would redeem present suffering. That meaning lay ahead, not here. Persuasion, by contrast, meant living without leaning on the future at all. It meant standing fully in the present, without illusions, without promises, without escape. This was not a philosophy of hope. It was a philosophy of exposure. And exposure, Michelstaedter believed, was almost unbearable for the human psyche. As his ideas sharpened, so did his isolation. While other students discussed careers, politics, and romance, Michelstaedter withdrew into silence. Not because he hated people, but because he could no longer participate in what he saw as collective self-deception. Every casual conversation felt false. Every expression of optimism felt dishonest. He was not depressed in the conventional sense. He was too lucid for that. What he experienced was clarity without refuge. He wrote to his family less often. When he did, his letters were heavy with an unspoken weight. His mother sensed something was wrong, but could not name it. How could she? How do you explain to someone that the life they wish for you a respectable career, a family, social stability feels like a carefully decorated prison? Michelstaedter was not rejecting happiness because he could not attain it. He was rejecting it because he believed it did not exist in the form people imagined. To him, happiness was always conditional, always temporary, always dependent on circumstances that could collapse at any moment. And anything that fragile could not serve as the foundation of a life. The fire of truth was already burning inside him, and it was only growing stronger. The early 20th century was intoxicated with progress. Electricity illuminated cities. Machines promised efficiency. Political movements promised liberation. Social reforms promised justice. Everywhere one looked, the future shimmered with possibility. But Michelstaedter saw something else beneath this optimism. Vast machinery designed to keep humanity from confronting itself. He believed progress did not free people from suffering. It only changed the form of their distractions. Each innovation provided a new excuse not to stop and ask the most dangerous question of all. What is the point of continuing? Society, in his view, functioned like an elaborate system of postponement, constantly pushing meaning into the future. This was rhetoric at its most sophisticated. Not lies spoken aloud, but lies lived daily. Michelstaedter's masterwork, Persuasion and Rhetoric, was written as his doctoral thesis, but it was anything but academic. It was a philosophical detonation. In it, he argued that rhetoric governs nearly all human behavior. We tell ourselves stories to justify endurance. We endure today because tomorrow will be better. We sacrifice now because later we will be rewarded. We accept suffering because it is necessary. But persuasion rejects all of this. Persuasion demands total presence. It demands living without tomorrow as a justification. It demands that one stand in the present moment without leaning on hope, reward, or meaning promised later. To live persuasively is to live without psychological crutches. Few people, Michelstaedter believed, are capable of this, and fewer still would choose it voluntarily. Even love, the most sacred of human experiences, did not escape his scrutiny. His relationship with his cousin Nadia was intense, emotional, and deeply human. Yet it collapsed under the weight of his philosophy. Not because love was absent, but because Michelstaedter could no longer accept love as consolation. He believed most romantic relationships were built on mutual illusions, shared fantasies about the future, about fulfillment, about being completed by another person. To love persuasively, he wrote, would mean loving without hope, without expectation, without future. A love without promises. A love that does not attempt to escape mortality or loneliness. Such love, while pure, is almost impossible to sustain. And so even love became another sacrifice to truth. As his manuscript neared completion, Michelstaedter's inner world grew increasingly narrow. Not empty, but unbearably dense. Every thought carried consequence. Every insight demanded consistency. Unlike philosophers who allowed themselves contradiction, he demanded absolute coherence between thought and life. This was his greatest strength and his fatal flaw. Where others found ways to live alongside their ideas, Michelstaedter refused coexistence. If an idea was true, it had to be lived, fully, without compromise, without exception. There could be no retreat into comfort, no strategic forgetting, no selective blindness. The price of such integrity was enormous. His notebooks from this period reveal a man who felt trapped by his own clarity. Not confused, not lost, but cornered. He had dismantled every illusion that once made life tolerable, yet found nothing he was willing to replace them with. He did not seek death, but he could no longer accept life as it was conventionally lived. Society offered him a future. His family offered him support. His intellect offered him recognition. But none of these addressed the fundamental problem he had identified, that life structured around postponement is not life at all. The fire had burned away every refuge. On October 17, 1910, the day after completing Persuasion and Rhetoric, Carlo Michelstaedter ended his life. He was 23 years old. To some, this was proof that his philosophy failed, that it led nowhere, that it was too extreme to sustain a human life. But such judgments miss the deeper tragedy and the deeper challenge of his work. Michelstaedter did not die because he misunderstood life. He died because he understood it too well and refused to look away. His death forces an uncomfortable question upon us. How much truth can a human being endure? Is there a point at which clarity becomes destructive? Or is it our refusal to face truth that quietly destroys us over time? Today, his words feel disturbingly current. In an age of endless scrolling, constant stimulation, and perpetual distraction, Michelstaedter's critique cuts deeper than ever. We fill every moment with noise to avoid silence. We chase productivity to avoid reflection. We plan futures to avoid confronting the present. We wake up, check our phones, work toward goals, seek validation, consume content, repeat, day after day, year after year. And rarely do we stop to ask whether this motion is movement or merely avoidance. Michelstaedter would ask, are we living or simply killing time until time kills us? He does not offer comfort. He does not offer solutions. He offers exposure, a mirror held so close it becomes painful. His philosophy does not tell us how to live. It asks whether we are willing to live without lies. Perhaps the value of his tragic journey is not in its conclusion, but in its refusal to soothe. He reminds us that existence is not something to be anesthetized, that being alive is not the same as being busy, that truth, while destructive, is also the only thing that prevents us from sleepwalking through our lives. His final message echoes quietly but relentlessly. The person who wishes to own their life must learn to live without tomorrow, not as a plan, not as a promise, but as a psychological dependency. We do not need to follow Michelstaedter to his end, but we cannot ignore the fire he carried, because somewhere within each of us is the same fear that if we stopped running, if we stopped distracting ourselves, if we truly faced existence without illusion, we might not like what we see. And yet, refusing to look does not make the truth disappear. It only ensures we spend our lives running from shadows we never understand. If truth burns, perhaps it is because it is meant to, not to destroy us, but to remind us that we are alive.